and welcome to today's LinkedIn Live. Today we have Suzanne Dann, who is the CEO of Americas for Wipro. Not my first Wipro guest, but maybe the one that I'm most excited to speak to because I just found out she's a neighbor. We are within literally throwing distance of each other here in South Florida this time of year. So excited about that. But we'll talk about all things Wipro, senior leadership, and how, in particular, Wipro is dealing with the topic of the moment, which is AI. So let me bring you to the fore, Suzanne, and thank you again for being with us today.
It's a pleasure, Karen. Thank you so much for having me.
Great. So first, I'd like to just hear from you about your role as CEO of the Americas. And I know in some places it's shown as Americas 2 at Wipro. And so I'm curious both about that designation and about the role. And then, how did you come into this role?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have responsibility for part of our Americas business. So we are about $11.5 billion company. We have 4 CEOs organized geographically. So 2 of us cover the Americas business. We have 1 in APMEA and 1 in Europe. So for the Americas business, we call it Americas 2. I wish we had a more glamorous name for it. That includes our financial services sector, high tech, energy, manufacturing, and resources. So all of the automotive, oil and gas clients, utility clients, as well as Canada. And my colleague has all the remaining sectors, which includes healthcare and retail and CPG. So in the lion's share, about 60% of our business resides in America. So we have a big set of clients we must take care of in our Americas business.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Thank you. That's much, much clearer now. And maybe at 3 a.m., the right name will come to one or the other of us.
Well, let me know if you think of it. I have had no success.
I'm sure you've had a lot of people working on that over time. So you've been in this role for a couple of years now. How did you come to it from a leadership standpoint?
Yeah, well, I've always been in technology. I can't believe it's been 30 years. I started in consulting and strategy and data and architecture. And throughout the years, spent time across consulting, services, sales at some of the larger firms. And the opportunity to come to work to Wipro about 4 years ago when we were considering how we would transform to be a true global consultancy and bring in consulting industry as well as deep technical skills that we had in India. We're about 250,000 people. And how do you really harness all that wonderful talent we had in our India delivery centers and Philippines and other locations and bring that to solve the hardest business problems our clients were having in the US? And that to me was an extraordinary and very interesting challenge. So I came in and ran our capital markets and insurance business, which was a little shy of $1 billion. And then I had the opportunity and was asked by the former CEO to take over the Americas 2 business. And I've been in that role for the past 3 years. So it's been really exciting.
Wow. So exciting from a lot of different perspectives, as I can imagine. But one of those certainly would be the impact that AI is having in this sort of transformative moment that we're having now, this inflection point. And I would think particularly in the way that we deliver personalized services. How do you see AI sort of striking, and how do you strike the balance between automation and sort of this genuine human connection? Sort of the human element being what I think Wipro has been known for in its history.
Yeah, this is a really exciting time to be in business and I think technology. We've seen so many shifts, right? We've seen the dot-com era. We've seen smartphones. We've seen so many things shifting over our time. And now we're seeing AI. And AI is more than just a technology shift. It's a paradigm shift. And that truly is the difference. It's not just about implementing a new technology. It's rethinking how you do your business and how you could do your business differently. And the AI tools are evolving very quickly. And it's about how do you rethink your business processes, not just automation, but the intelligence in which you can incorporate into those. And how do you get your teams to leverage the great tools that are out there and understand how they can help them do their jobs better and enable them to be smarter? We've all seen the comments that you're not going to lose your job to an AI. You're going to lose your job to the person who knows how to use it.
Right.
And I think that's a really powerful statement because it's about how do we as leaders embrace AI? And I know so many of your talks are about leadership. It has to start from the top down. I use AI every day and I'm learning every day and I'm constantly reading. I just read a piece one of my former colleagues wrote about coding and how AI seems to generate wonderful code and we're all using it to generate code. But then the question becomes, what about the comments that you write in your code? As a good coder who understands the business and what it's solving, what about the little subtle nuances? There's a real opportunity for this generation to say, I can do my job better if I am a coder. But how can I make the code that this AI generates smarter, better, more reusable and agile? So those are the things that I think really open up a new window of opportunity for people who in their day-to-day jobs can make them more interesting and then do things that are more interesting, but also as leaders, how we coach our teams.
That is such a good point. I just helped an organization hire a COO, and we had a very thorough brief about what this CEO needs to be able to do and the qualifications and all of that. And we met a candidate who was like so outside the spec, but so perfect. But we kept looking because we were like, she's so outside the spec. And she ended up being the person that was hired because she was transformative. But I thought if this were an AI algorithm that she had to get through, she wouldn't have been interviewed because she was like so overqualified and had all these other things. And so I think it's this combination of maybe generative AI will get to the point that they could do what we did with this. But anyway, for me, it was a really great example of you really do have to have both. So are you at Wipro? I mean, you must have a big transformation effort underway, probably for some time now, in order to support this new transformational technology.
So AI is nothing new, right? It's been around, we've been working on machine learning as long as I can remember, even back 10 years. And it's now really, with Gen AI, it's just sped up and really made it available to everyone, this word democratization. And I think about over 2 years ago, maybe it's almost 3 at this point, that we recognized this, need to really invest in AI. And we announced our $1 billion investment in AI. But really a key part of that was how do we upskill and future-proof our workforce? And we asked everyone at Wipro, all 250,000 or 25,000 of our people, to get trained in the basics of AI. So basic AI training plus responsibility governance, how to protect your client data, how to make sure that you're using it in a responsible way. And we created platforms internally for users and all of our associates to use it, leverage it, test it, experience it. We're all active users of Copilot. So we have fully embraced, and of our talent, over 50,000 of them have gone on to much more advanced AI training. And that doesn't just include the coders. Those are the business analysts. Those are the consultants. Those are the data practitioners. And I think that's what's really a testament to this as a business transformation, not just a technology one. And I truly believe that's critical for us to be successful. We are also implementing Gen AI throughout our organization. We leveraged it for HR. We developed a cognitive HR agent that can answer any questions around everything around policies, procedures, and HR internally at Wipro. We've answered over 8 million queries at this point through the agent at greater than 90% accuracy. I think it's over 95% now, which is fantastic. So you can quickly get your answers, rather than picking up the phone or sending emails, waiting for a response. And it's examples like that where we're using AI that have really made us rethink, who plays what role and who does what work. And taking maybe some of those tasks that people know an agent can do or a cognitive agent can do and let them focus on things that are really interesting and transformative. And that's what gets me interested and excited.
Yeah, it probably gets your employees interested and excited as well. Once they get over this curve of, the change curve, how is this going to impact me, particularly in a negative way, right? But to have a win where you can show it impacts in a positive way. Can you give an example or two of how you're using AI or AI-driven tools in a new way with clients?
Yeah, so we're doing a lot of really interesting work. One that I'm excited about, I've been talking to a lot of clients, is around wealth management. So we've really worked to develop I'll call it also very much a cognitive agent or an FA's assistant that is able to bring together data across a wide spectrum of data sources, both internal and external, create kind of a neural network of connections. so that a financial advisor can be more specific about the things they recommend, the areas of interest of their client, who they're connected to, where their other investments may be, and can be more proactive in offering good financial guidance and advice. And we've implemented that at one wealth management firm in their partnership, and we've been taking that to a number of other firms. And it truly is game changing in terms of making a financial advisor smarter and more efficient in terms of the work they do and in managing the money and investments and pure, their retirement of their clients. So that's one area I'm really excited. Simple things that we've been doing that seem simple, but really game changing. In the utilities industry, we combined robotics and AI to help assess the health and quality of water pipelines to see if there's any chance of damage or future damage. And are they eroding? And the robots are able to go in there where a human would normally need to look or use a camera, right, with some long fishing, to go see what's going on. And we're able to bring that together with analytics to really understand, what does that data show, that visual data? Does it demonstrate that there's corrosion or other issues going on? And bringing those things together, we wouldn't have been able to do that before. And that's really bringing kind of AI analytics, the visualization, and the robotics together. So it's new ways of performing activities in business that truly are transformative. That gets me excited around the kind of work we're doing at Wipro.
Yeah, I think about the huge need for infrastructure maintenance and repair, and what a big market that must be for you as well as for your clients. Yeah,
absolutely. And also the preventive maintenance saves a tremendous amount of money, right? Before you have a failure, being able to mitigate that. So from an operational perspective, it's tremendously useful across a number of industries, whether it's manufacturing, utilities, oil and gas, which is terrific.
Yeah. Great. How are you approaching this as a leader, right? So how do you see the role of leaders evolving or changing now that work is being done differently than it has been done in the past?
Yeah, I think, there's two pieces of it. One is leaders, depending on the industry you're in, you really must in some ways reimagine what team success looks like and how you want to develop the talent of your team and what are the skills they need, in thinking about how AI tools can help them. We talk about the evolving role of understanding the business being so much more important than just having the underlying technical skills. And also the communication collaboration skills become even more important, because if the real hard technical, some of it can be done by an agent, the human needs to tie it together with what the business outcome needs to be in the client communication, what that may be. So all those pieces, I think, become even more important as we think about what talent needs to be doing and how do we really ensure our talent and the people who are joining firms today can grow in their careers. So I think that's one key lever. The second is, I really do believe in lead by example. So in my role, I think it's important for me to constantly be learning what tools are out there, what's happening in the technology. And it's a challenge for any of us to keep up. Every day there's something new, but I'm constantly reading and trying to understand how this world of AI is changing, what clients are doing, what industry leaders are doing, so we can stay at the forefront. And I think the only way our teams are going to do the same is if they see leaders doing that and leading by example. I also think the pace of decision making has changed considerably with all the data and insights. The expectation of pace of change is evolving. So I think as leaders, our ability to make decisions, use the data we have to make informed decisions, and then layer on what I call more the EQ and did you sense that this woman, as you mentioned in the interview, was the right candidate, but maybe on paper she wasn't? Like, fantastic. Like, those are the kinds of things, as we think about the roles that we play, are become even more important.
Yeah. Oh, you have at least 3 threads there that I want to pull on.
Okay.
So let's start
that
with.
Means I said too much, Karen.
I think let's start with the employees with 250,000 or more people across the globe. I mean, you must have a tremendous program for upskilling. I had a conversation with some of the leadership at SAP a few months back, and just this role of how do we not just prepare for today's jobs, but prepare for the jobs that are coming, knowing that there will continue to be this change, and we're not, we don't know exactly how everything will play out. But what are you doing directionally, I'd say, in terms of upskilling employees at this point?
Yeah. So first, as I mentioned, the kind of foundational learning, that's table stakes, understanding responsible AI, how to work with our clients, governance, frameworks, all the things that we do to help our clients define their strategy and move forward. So all the templates we're creating, making sure our teams know and are aware of all this great content and leverage it, experience it. So that's number one. We also encourage our teams to get that additional training. Go get your more advanced training. Take advantage of what all, the large firms, whether it's an SAP or Microsoft, AWS, Google, what they're doing. Go get trained and see what's out there and really learn and use the AI that's available. The second is we have lots of teams who are building what I'll call accelerators, building on a framework, building on the platform. So we have AI accelerators that help prevent hallucinations, that help drive contextualization. So use those things that we've developed and we continue to develop and provide feedback on this so you get that experience. I think the other element is the roles will change. The roles will change. And I do believe making sure you have a variety of skills that you can leverage as the roles evolve. Meaning, if you are working on a piece of code or development for a client or a product, make sure you understand what that product is. What's the element you're developing? What part of the business process are you re-engineering? What is the data platform you're building? Understand the business outcome that's required. Before we would say the teams don't know that level of depth or may not have that full breadth of exposure. I think that's becoming more critical to really understand not just the technical work you're doing, but what is it being a part of and what is the outcome that the client is trying to achieve because of that. Because I imagine that the insights that you have, or even the things, they are absolutely an opportunity to maybe do something better or different. And I'm constantly encouraging my teams to come with those ideas. And all my clients, every meeting I go to says, tell your team to speak up. Tell them when they see us doing something that maybe can be done better, tell us. Every meeting I'm in with my teams, I tell them that. The client wants to hear from you because you're doing the good work. And I really do believe that's also how they're going to evolve their skills, by saying, I can do this with AI. It will be a lot easier if I implement, or let me show you what I did with AI and how it sped up or made something better, or the quality was better, or the speed was better. And I do think that's how we're going to evolve and change. And it's going to be more grassroots than top down.
Yeah. Well, short-term efficiency, which is just the plug and play. I mean, I'm an industrial engineer by degree, so there's a part of me that really loves that. But I think when you don't have the big picture, you don't have the context, your decision-making just isn't as good. And I know from 20 years of consulting with organizations that employees are more engaged when they understand the why. And when they have the freedom to make decisions that make a difference in the business. So really glad to hear you're doing that. The other thing you mentioned, which I loved, was how leaders stay informed and as up to date as possible, right? No one that I'm talking to is spending their full-time jobs working on AI, but how do you stay as up to date as possible, both so you can model, but so that you can be more effective in your role? What are some of the sources or ways that you stay up to date?
Yeah, well, I'd have to say LinkedIn helps tremendously. And this is not just because we're on LinkedIn. I do see some of my former colleagues posting amazing articles that they've read.
Yes.
And I use that as a wonderful source, and also perspectives. As I was saying, I just read a colleague who's writing about coding. And I thought that's one small piece of what AI could do, but man, that's a really interesting point. What's the role of a coder, right? And how do we enhance the role of a coder with AI? And I was meeting with a client recently on a similar topic. We were talking about testing and what we've done with AI and testing and making it more efficient and driving higher quality of the outcomes on testing. And they were talking, and he shared with me one example where a junior colleague said, someone who was recently hired, only maybe a year or two out of school, said, I did all this, but I did it without AI as a super proud moment. And he said, no, I want you to do it with AI and make it better. And it was kind of a moment of, oh, am I allowed to? Is this what's encouraged? And I think that's the culture change. That's like a simple example, but that's the culture change we need to have. I think about my kids in school. They were told for very early on, couple of years ago, when this first came, that they couldn't use ChatGPT. They couldn't use it. And now that dialogue has changed at many, which I'm really excited to see, to say, yes, you can use AI, but you're going to have to explain what you and the AI did together. And that, to me, is the fundamental shift we need to do in the business world, as well as the education world. And as consumers, whether we're talking to a bank or we're purchasing something, we're expecting that experience to be just as good as when we use AI, right? And I think that's the shift that we're going to see as consumers, as well as, serving our businesses so they can help their consumers and clients.
Yeah, I love the story about your kid. I mean, we need to be able to use all the tools that are available in the toolbox safely, rationally, but we need to be able to use them. I mean, I don't know about you, but when I was in college in engineering, early on, it was like you cannot use a computer. It's like, what do you mean I can't use a computer? You can't use a calculator. I just pulled in my desk drawer and pulled out this calculator. I need to know how to add, of course. I need to know how to do basic math, but I also need to be able to use the technology that's around me, no matter how simple or how sophisticated, in order to make better decisions.
And I think that is important for our education.
I love that that's being
I do.
encouraged.
SATs went from paper-based pen, and I used paper and pencil. And now I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, there's a calculator section. So a section on basic math and one with a calculator. So that's slow evolution, but we're seeing, and I think very similar. The kids that are growing up today are not only going to be digital natives, they're going to be Gen AI natives. Yeah. The ones that are getting out of school and joining the workforce now are early adopters. So we're all in a position where we can embrace AI and leverage it to make our businesses more successful. And I do really believe the ones that are embracing it now are going to accelerate exponentially. And there's no time to be a fast follower. I almost said slow, a fast follower. I just don't think you'll catch up. It's moving too fast.
No, someone said to me, it'll never be less complicated than it is today. So you just have to jump in and know that you won't have all the answers. You won't be able to know it all, which doesn't mean you can't know enough to get your job done. And just stay curious. And that brings me to the topic of executive decision making. So as I was saying to you before we went on air, I really am fascinated with ambiguity. And I believe one of the most underrated traits for executives, but one almost all, if not all, successful executives have is curiosity and this ability to be comfortable with ambiguity and have a bias for action. Can't wallow in the ambiguity forever, but to know when does the decision need to be made and make it at the right point, not just because we can. So but by the time that a decision comes to you to be made, I'm imagining a lot of people elsewhere in the organization have been unable to make it because it wasn't clear what the answer is. And so executives end up looking at these decisions, I think about as sort of 49-51 decisions, where it's very close with there's no clear answer or outcome, and that territory just comes with your role. How do you approach those decisions, and what's your decision-making process?
Yeah, so you made an interesting point around speed and ambiguity. So I have found that it's very important not to belabor decisions. I actually believe sometimes the speed in which you make a decision is more important at times than it being the perfect decision. A lot of times when I'm making decisions and I realize there's a lot of noise surrounding it because people haven't been made to get to a decision, or there's a lot of emotion around the decision, that I ground myself in the data. I go back and I say, what is the data telling us? As much as I have, and it may not be everything I need, but enough in which it'll give me a clear picture of what the problem is at hand, or what the two options are typically, or three, but typically two. And then I make a decision. And sometimes it's the right decision, and sometimes we make a wrong decision. Then the question becomes, how agile is your organization and your leaders to recover if the decision was not good? And sometimes you don't know for a long time. Sometimes you know very quickly.
Right.
But I actually think it's better to make the decision, fail fast, and recover than not to make the decision at all and belabor. And I've seen that time and time again. So I've learned actually in this role over the past couple of years that it's really important to move forward, keep moving forward. And I believe with with the pace of change we're seeing, with the lack sometimes of clarity on where things are heading, whether it's economic or just in terms of what we're doing it with, internally, you just got to move forward. And, I believe that has been very successful approach for me. But at the end of the day, especially with people decisions, I ground myself in the data to take some of the bias or emotion out of the first blush at what the decision should be.
Yeah, terrific. Well, I can certainly see why you've been successful in your career and are a good fit for your role today. Suzanne, I just want to thank you again for making time to be with us today. We've been speaking with Suzanne Dann, who's CEO of the Americas 2, so a large slice of clients, one of 4 CEOs at Wipro. Thank you again for making time with us, and all my best to you and your team.
Thank you, Karen. It's been wonderful. Much
Thanks.
appreciated.